Welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm John Gordon for this week's edition of The Truth. Today, we're going to be talking about the assassination of Charlie Kirk and people remembering him. We're also going to be talking about too late Jerome Powell finally steps up to and does his job. A little bit about the Epstein files. NVIDIA just sent Intel an early Christmas present, $5 billion. And Donald J. Trump visited the UK where they treated him like, well, royalty. Look, you want to stay tuned today. I want you to stay tuned. Thank you for joining us. But we've got a great show lined up for you. Today we have got Emerald Robinson. She's a former Newsmax and OAN White House correspondent. She's one of the smartest people in Washington journalism, if you want to get down to it. And she thinks that she smells a rat in the FBI's recitation of the facts as relates to Charlie Kirk's assassination. We're going to get into it. We're going to get down into the weeds. We're going to peel the layers of the onions back. But there was a guy in the crowd who yelled, "Shoot me, shoot me, shoot me," right after Charlie was assassinated. There are questions about the entry wound versus an exit wound. Then it's a little curious that they took the tent down and removed the camera immediately after Charlie was assassinated. Maybe that could constitute tampering or removing evidence. We're going to get into all that with Emerald Robinson. You'll want to stay tuned. She'll be coming up at the bottom of the program. Stacey Mincey and Carlos Toriello are two of the smartest people I know. Stacey is the registrar in that huge metropolis known as Screven County. It's down there just south of Augusta, north of Savannah. And she has innovated election integrity like no one else in the country does. You'll want to stay tuned to find out exactly what Stacey has revolutionized with the help of her technology partner, Carlos Toriello. It is not the solution, but it's a major part of a possible solution. Also today, we'll be joined by Wayne Morrow. He's the CEO of the John Birch Society. It's not your father's John Birch Society. And he'll be talking about saving our republic, government accountability, and upholding the Constitution. Today's episode of The Truth is brought to you by Perfect Circle Renewable Energy. And there is so much to talk about. So much to talk about. The range of emotions that we're feeling this week on so many different levels is just like being in some sort of an automobile accident where you get whiplash from left to right. One day you're up, one day you're down. And it's just really, maybe my youngest son has it figured out. He says, "Dad, I don't watch the news. It's just a time waster and it's an emotional drain." Well, I know what Grayson is saying, and he's locked into his business, Bogey's Beef, that is growing by leaps and bounds. But I do follow the news, and I did know Charlie Kirk reasonably well. I've known him for a long time, for about 8 years. We first met on the University of Georgia campus in 2017, and I've had a lot of interactions with Charlie since then. I've been to 2 or 3 of his annual fundraisers at Mar-a-Lago, held every January. They are sights to behold. My gosh, folks, you will not believe the amount of money that this young man raised. The first year I went, which was maybe 4 years ago, he raised $23 million in about 20 minutes. He had people standing up in the audience saying, "Charlie, my wife Gladys and I just appreciate what you're doing so much, and we'd like to pledge $1 million. And then somebody else would stand up and say, "Well, I'm from Texas and we do it bigger and better down here. So my wife Susie and I are going to pledge $2 million. And I'm telling you, you just keep track of it. You keep adding it up in your head. $23 million is what he raised. But that was surpassed by the following year, when I sat in the audience and he raised over $40 million. Admittedly, that was half of it was from one kind, generous lady whose husband was one of Charlie Kirk's earliest donors. And I guess they have a lot of capacity, but her husband passed away, and she said that she knew that her husband would want her to make a significant gift to Turning Point USA. And boy, did she ever. So the first time I met Charlie, I said was at the University of Georgia. That is not correct. That's the first time I spent any time with him. The first time I met him was in Atlanta, Georgia, when a friend of mine, Dudley Moore, held a reception for him and Candace Owens, actually. And there were about 50 of us in the room, and we were able to engage with Charlie. And so that was 8 years ago. He died at 31. So do the math. He was 23 years old, and he had not attended college. And I left that meeting, that reception, and told my wife, that is one of the smartest people I have ever known. And especially when you consider the fact that he had not gone to college. But he did go to Baylor for about a day, and he met Ken Starr, who was the president of the university, and he told, that's Ken Starr who tried to impeach Bill Clinton, lost by 1 vote, as I recall, maybe 2. I didn't like that, by the way. I felt like that was mean and just not relevant. What Clinton did was not good, not defending Clinton, but Ken Starr was just being a voyeur. And I didn't like it. I felt that it was not as bad as Clinton's conduct. I don't think then or now that it raised to the level of a high misdemeanor or felony. What he did with Monica Lewinsky, it was deplorable. You can criticize it, you can rail against it, but it was not, in my view, an impeachable offense. And I resented the fact that Ken Starr did that. And guess who was one of his lead prosecutors? Brent Kavanaugh. He worked for Ken Starr on that prosecution of President Clinton. We suffered a huge loss last week, and the world is reacting. And this loaned, I say loan, I don't mean that. This crazed gunman, who I don't think was acting alone, and we'll get into that with Emerald Robinson later in the show. But this crazed young man, I mean, you know, my heart aches for Erica Kirk and her 2 children. It literally, I'm bleeding with grief for her and her children. I cannot imagine what she is going through. And the thing that makes it so difficult and makes it so hard is that it was so unnecessary. I mean, all this idiot did was take the life of another human being and leave a trail of grief behind, not for the victim. He's dead. He's gone. If there's any silver lining in this at all, and there's not, I would just say that thank God Charlie did not suffer. I don't think he suffered a second. People I've spoken to in the medical profession said that the shot resulted in him immediately becoming unconscious and then losing so much blood that he expired very quickly. And the belief is that he didn't suffer. But what the dumbass that killed him did was left a trail of suffering behind for Charlie's relatives and his family and the people who knew him and loved him and over 1 million people who supported him. Turning Point USA had 1 million supporters. Well, Erica Kirk has said that she is going to continue on. She's going to continue Charlie Kirk's legacy, and she will perform the duties of CEO, and she effectively said, you ain't seen nothing yet. She said, if you think Turning Point USA was impactful before, just wait. And that's what this crazed assassin, what's his name, Anthony? Robinson? Tyler Robinson? You know, I got to tell you, and I know this is stupid. Tell me what you think. Just either in the comments, if you're on Rumble, Getter, YouTube, Facebook, X, wherever you're watching, leave in the comments. You're going to tell me I'm just a bleeding heart softy. But there's a piece of me that feels bad for Tyler Robinson. Not because he deserves any pity or compassion other than the fact that he was a human being, but you look at him, I wish he only had one tooth and had a dagger sticking out of his forehead or a horn. But he just looks so normal and so young and youthful and vibrant and a whole life future ahead of him. And the opportunity to have made his parents proud and to have built self-esteem. And it's a loss. It is a complete and utter loss. And just if there are any other young people on our broadcast today, and I do want to figure out, let me know, how can we attract a younger demographic? All of our listeners are approaching being old like me. We do really good in 50-year-olds and over, and we do really good with males and females. We're about 50-50. But I would like to get to younger people because I have something to say to them. And if there's any lesson that can come out of this for young people, regardless of your political affiliation or belief, or because of your sexual preferences or beliefs, resorting to violence is an end to nowhere. It accomplishes nothing. In fact, in the case of Charlie Kirk, it has had a counter effect because Turning Point in the last 10 days has gone from 1 million supporters to 12 million people who have sent in donations since Charlie was assassinated. Now, do you think Tyler Robinson had the presence of mind to think about that? He looks like he meticulously planned this. Did he ever stop and ask himself, what will happen what could go wrong with this plan? Do you think he really thought that he could get away with it? Do you think he really didn't stop and think of the fact that when he drove 3.5 hours to get to Utah where the assassination took place, that all those security cameras on the interstate and at the toll bridges and wherever else wouldn't record him and we couldn't watch him? And do you think he could get into the side of the university building and go undetected, and that the security cameras wouldn't pick him up, and all the Ring doorbells that he passed by wouldn't be able to be looked at and see that he was walking towards the venue where Charlie was assassinated? Do you think he was so delusional that he didn't consider any of that? Was he so delusional that he thought that he could pull the trigger, get the shot off, kill Charlie, and escape unnoticed, undetected, and get away with it? Was he that crazy? But I'm telling you, if you're young and you're having emotional issues and you have these ideations of hurting or harming someone else, please stop and think for a moment that you're going to accomplish nothing except ending your own life, which is exactly what Tyler Robinson has done. He has taken a potential bright future. I've read that he was quiet, that he was thoughtful, that he didn't talk very much, but evidently he had a fascination with guns, and he loved to talk about guns. Well, I know a lot of people who have a fascination with cars, but they don't use them with malintent. And there are many things that people have fascinations with. I mean, I've had friends when we were in grammar school and high school who liked to collect knives. They didn't do it because they wanted to harm anybody or hurt themselves or anybody else. They just liked to collect knives. My son likes to collect knives. He went to Japan and he brought me home a souvenir, which was a sushi knife, because he knows I like to eat sushi. Now, I don't think I'm ever going to use it. It might be a decorative piece on the wall somewhere someday, because I'm not fixing sushi. I do like to eat it, but I'm not fixing it. Sorry, Grace, if you're listening. But I do appreciate the thought. I do appreciate the thoughtfulness and the memento. But the point I'm just trying to make, folks, is that, don't get me started about, he used a gun to kill Charlie with. If he didn't have the gun, he would have stolen the gun. If he didn't have a gun, he would have used a knife like that lunatic did in Charlotte, North Carolina, when he stabbed the lady to death on the subway. These people are seriously ill. But did the mainstream media report on the savage murder of the lady on the subway in Charlotte? No, it was from people like me that reported it. The alternative news departments. That's who reported it. But this is just idiotic. You've got these people that go on YouTube and will take to the streets to celebrate the death of a fellow human being. And what do they expect to accomplish from that? When they celebrate the death of another person who was beloved by so many, it just really does turn up the flames of hate. And I look at them and I have to self-discipline because I don't want to hate anybody. Now, I do hate what Tyler Robinson did. I hate it. And I have a very healthy quotient of dislike for him. But I also feel sorry for him because he's ruined his life. He ruined his life. And you know what else he did? And this is the saddest. Next to losing Charlie, that's the first most important subject of guilt, or grief rather. But you know what the next saddest and subject of grief is for me? Tyler Robinson's parents and his brothers. You know, you look at them, they appear to me to be God-fearing, good people who worked hard to raise 3 boys just like my wife and I have. And look at what Tyler Robinson reflected back on them. They probably will never be able to go out in public. They probably won't ever be able to go out to a public restaurant or even maybe go to church without being condemned and mocked and taunted and tormented. And I don't think they played a role in this. From all accounts, they were good people. From what I can tell, they were good, God-fearing, they are good, God-fearing people who just ended up raising a son who lost his mind. And I think that's what happened. And it's so sad to me all the way around. It is sad to me. But Tyler, you screwed up, buddy, because what you tried to do resulted in just the opposite. Turning Point going from 1 million people to 12 million, 36,000 new inquiries to start Turning Point chapters in high schools, colleges, and universities. You just totally botched it. Every part of this plan was flawed from the very beginning. And in the process, you stripped away one of the finest human beings I've ever had the privilege of knowing, and you deprived his wife and children of having a father and husband, and you deprived your own family of being able to be proud of their son. Instead, they have to bury their heads in shame. It is so sad. It is so remorseful. And I don't really blame anybody except for the loss of good mental health for the assailant. How could he have gone wrong? How could his mind have become so perverted and so demonic? Maybe he was just evil to the core. I don't know. And I don't want to judge. And I don't want to hate. I don't want to hate. As hard as it is not to hate this kid, I don't want to hate. I just want to hate the action. And I want to ask, what can we learn from it? Can we learn anything from it? Well, what I would like to encourage is that we stop. It becomes a contest for who can hate the most, it seems like. You think Jimmy Kimmel hates people? I think he hates Trump. Did you hate George Floyd? Did you hate the cop? I didn't hate either of them. I disliked what the cop did. I had no respect for George Floyd, who had been involved. He had been in the criminal justice system his whole adult life and was a habitual drug taker, and he was high when he got killed. And where was it? Minnesota. Is that right? Was it in Minneapolis? I think so. But he had a criminal record as long as your arm. But what happened after that? There were riots. There were buildings that were burned. The federal building in Seattle and in Portland and CNN in my own hometown was literally lit on fire in the front of CNN. Has there even been a bottle thrown since Charlie Kirk was murdered? What you've got to conclude is that the leftist liberals in this country, and I hate to even say Democrats because I think that paints an unfair depiction of all Democrats, and there are a lot of them. But if you are a Democrat, how can you be affiliated with a party that condones assassination? Do you know that a recent poll just this week showed that 25% of Democrats think that political assassination is an appropriate response? I'm telling you, folks, listen to me. This country is in trouble. And the reason we're in trouble is because we are so fixated on being politically correct and not being labeled a sexist, a racist, I don't even know what all these words mean, a misogynist, what are some more ist? I don't know. An old man ist? Huh? Ageist. Well, you know, I can help you career adjust if you want to, you impudent young man. An ageist. What's the matter with him? But you get the point. And I had, Anthony, I want you to go find it. And we'll play it during the interview with Emerald Robinson. But we interviewed Charlie on this show 8 or 9 months ago. I hope you heard it. And we talked about that very thing. We talked about how people are fearful for speaking their mind and telling the truth because they are afraid of these mean labels that are attached to them, that attack their character. And who wants that? And so what we do is we sit on our hands with hands trembling and our extremities become cold with the very thought of telling people that we know what we believe to be the truth. And what I'm telling you today is that Tyler Robinson was mentally handicapped. He was unhinged. He was deranged. Now, I don't want to offer him sympathy, but I can have enough insight to be sympathetic to people who suffer from mental illness in this country. And if you know someone who is suffering, you really need to reach out to them and offer them compassion and a helping hand. We, as a community of a nation, we have got to somehow come together and not hate on each other. And we've got to figure out how to love people, even that we don't really like, because every single human being has intrinsic worth because God put them on this earth. But how in the hell do you love Adam Schiff? How in the hell do you love Eric Schwalwell or Dan Goldman or Elon Nur Omar, who effectively said that Charlie Kirk was responsible for his own death? That really pisses me off. That really makes me angry. And Jimmy Kimmel finally got his due. He finally got what he is deserving of. And that is to be canned from that. I don't even know what the name of the show was. Was it The Late Show? Was that the same show that Johnny Carson held for like 20 years? But that was The Tonight Show. What was Jimmy Kimmel? I think, doesn't Jimmy Fallon have The Tonight Show? I don't know. I don't watch them. That's proof positive that I do not watch them because I cannot stand to sit there and watch these idiots blabber who have never accomplished anything except the stature of a comic stand-up comedian. And, you know, they're probably funny or were funny, but then they got such big egos that they felt like they were justified in opining on topics of the day like Donald Trump. And Jimmy Kimmel thought that he could make a career out of dumping on Trump. Wrong. It finally caught up with him. Now that we can celebrate. There was no violence. There was no inappropriateness. There was a lot of patience. You know what we did? We gave that sorry, I can't say it. I can say it on the podcast, but not according to the FCC rules. That sorry jerk, you fill in the blank. We gave him all the rope he needed to hang himself with his career. And finally, the brass at NBC got enough courage to let him go. He was on NBC, wasn't he? ABC. Was he on ABC? Well, that even explains more. But you know that Gutfeld, he has got 3 million listeners. And President Trump is right. Jimmy Kimmel just failed. He failed as a comedian, and his viewership was cut in half. And I think he's got just south of 1.3 million, somewhere around short of 1.5 million. And then Jimmy Fallon is below him, and that guy from Saturday Night Live, who I kind of like but not much, is short of 1 million. He's on the late night. You know who I'm talking about? He's a millennial like you, Anthony. He's really pretty witty. Seth Meyer. There you go. Anyway, I think, you know, the pendulum has swung way back from where it was 4 years ago, and we were dealing with Mayorkas and Merrick Garland and Joe Biden, who wherever he was just out fishing for more money. And they were censoring people and canceling people and kicking them off of Twitter and paying Twitter to kick people off. I don't think there's been any allegations that anybody's getting paid anything to do anything now. But the laws of economics have kicked into effect. And when Jimmy Kimmel loses half of his audience, and just like with that other jerk, he was on CBS, Stephen Colbert, another idiot. You know, he could just dress nice and polish his shoes and then spew hate, and that was their ticket, they thought, to popularity. But they were popular among left liberal Democrats, and they probably didn't spend much money. They sure didn't spend money with the advertisers, and they all have gotten canned. Hallelujah. Now, I will celebrate that. That's fair. That's merit. And you can be rewarded or punished based on merit. Now, when's it going to catch up with Schiff, Swalwell, Goldman, Omar? Not fast enough for me. I just watched them this week at the Judiciary Committee that was grilling Kash Patel over the Epstein files. We finally got the Epstein files, or a bunch of them, and they were a bunch of nothing. They were just a big fat nothing burger. Didn't learn anything we didn't already know. And but they did find that 1 minute of tape that Pam Bondi said that they didn't have. How did that work? But I don't think we know what happened with the Epstein files. And frankly, I think it's too hard for the American people to hear. And I think that's why we're not being told the truth. And I think espionage and spying was very much a big part of it. That's what I believe. And I would love for somebody to prove me wrong. I don't want to believe that. I don't want to hate on our institutions of government. I really don't. I want to celebrate them. But you can't keep doing this stuff. You can't engage in murder and blackmail and corruption and get a free pass. And that's what our intelligence agencies are doing. Was it Mossad? I don't know. Was it Great Britain intelligence? Maybe it was them. Or you know what? Maybe it was all of them. Maybe it was all of them. I don't know. But that's why we're not being told the truth, I think. Jerome Powell, speaking about the laws of economics, he finally showed up for work and did his job, sort of. Half-baked. Quarter of a point. We needed a half. But it's a step in the right direction. And ladies and gentlemen, that is really the last brick that needs to be put in the mosaic for Trump to remake the United States economy. And boy, has he done it. We are on our way to an age of abundance, the golden age, if you will. I fervently believe that. Every spare penny I've got, I've invested in the stock market. Don't you do that. I'm 72. I can get away with it. You know, what's going to happen to me? I'm going to end up in the same old folks home I would have gone to anyway, probably. But I'm not recommending that to anybody, but I am fully invested and I am fully optimistic and I am so excited. And Tesla, I don't know if you've been following it, but from the time that we have been talking about it on this show, it is up 33%. It's hitting new highs every day. The robo-taxi is becoming a reality. The Optimus robot is becoming a reality. And the Tesla automobile is resuming its prior popularity. Not because we ever lost faith or confidence or liking Tesla, as the mainstream media would lead you to believe, but simply because Jerome Powell has lowered interest rates, meaning that it's going to be easier for people to afford it. Maybe you're going to buy one. I'm going to buy my wife a Christmas present. 72 years with me, she deserves it. I'm going to get her a Tesla. God, don't tell me I'm talking like Joe Biden. She's just in the next room, that's all. Or out back, I don't know. But anyway, yeah, I'm going to get her a Tesla. I want her to have that full self-driving, because the full self-driving today, I believe, is even better than a human driver right now. It's safer. And they've had the robo-taxi in Austin. They just launched it in San Francisco. After they did that at the end of June, so we got July, August, and a good part of September. There have been no major accidents. I don't even know what the minor accidents have been. I'm led to believe there have been some fender benders or maybe some minor hiccups where the car lost consciousness and couldn't decide whether to turn left, go straight, or turn right because of some unique occurrence. But anyway, take a look at it if you want to. I don't give investment advice. I'm not qualified. That's not what this show's about. But I do encourage you to look at it. Just like I encourage you to look at it, NVIDIA, which is trading at all-time highs, but they just invested 4.5% of their money in Intel. And now Intel stock, which President Trump invested in for the United States of America, just a month ago, he put 5% in it. I didn't like it. I said I didn't like mixing business with government, but he did it. He didn't consult with me. Darn him. Shame on him. But once again, maybe he's proven right, because Intel stock has soared. It was up from, I think, about $25 a share to $30 in one day, just with the announcement that NVIDIA invested $5 billion in Intel. They're not calling it a joint venture. Instead, they're calling it a collaboration. So basically, as I understand it, NVIDIA is going to pay Intel $5 billion, which they can use to manufacture chips, which NVIDIA can then buy back from them. I think that's how it's going to work, and they're going to be bigger, better, faster, lower heat. I don't know. All the things that make a chip good. You probably know the answer to that better than I do. But I think that's what the business plan calls for. So AI, artificial intelligence, it's on us. It is here. And I don't know about you, but I use Grok every day of my life, multiple times of the day. Aura and I have gotten to be good pals. And she's the voice of Grok. And the information that you can glean from Grok is just unbelievable. Same as Chat GPT. I just happen to like Grok because it's a Elon Musk project of XAI, which has also been now formed a venture with X, formerly Twitter, and the marriage between XAI, X, formerly Twitter, and Tesla is just a triumphant that is going to blow our socks off before the end of the day. So finally, President Trump went to the UK and they treated him like royalty. And he was in his element. He went to a state dinner at Windsor Castle and they rolled out the red carpet for him. And you could just tell he was in his element. He loved it. He relished every minute of it. And he said that this was really something. And you know what? I am so happy to see him doing that. Because you look at it, he's been to Qatar. He's now been to Great Britain. He went to, didn't he go to where'd he go? The G8 summit? Did he go to the G8 this summer? He's making the rounds, okay? And he's forging alliances and building relationships with all of these world leaders. And he's helping galvanize the Western world together, as we have to do to push back on Vladimir Putin, who Trump just this week said he's not happy with Putin and the way that he has acted. He considers it to be a betrayal because Putin told him he would make peace with the Ukraine, and Putin has instead turned up the heat and continues to bomb the Ukraine. That war continues to rage. Trump doesn't like it, and thousands of young people are losing their lives in the process. It is not, I don't believe, an exercise that will pay Russia back. I don't think they're going to get what they want. And it's just like, I think it's analogous to what Tyler Robinson did. He galvanized conservatives all over the world. 1 million people gathered in London to celebrate the life of Charlie Kirk. And as I said, 12 million people gave money. 36,000 chapters have been applied for on high school campuses and college and universities. And in the same way, I think Putin is pushing the Western world closer together, and we are actually becoming better friends with our allies. Because, the tariffs created a little bit of rockiness there. But now I think that our friends are beginning to see that fair trade is fair, and that, we do provide for a lot of Europe's defense. They have stepped up and they're starting to pay more of their own share. Trump got them to pay 2%. Now I think he's up to 4%, going to 5%. And we're getting a balance of trade with all of our trading partners. So to me, it's all good. The future looks bright. The one hiccup, the one stumbling block here is the level of hatred in this country and the divisiveness and the willingness to compromise on agreeing on the sanctity of human life. And I'm telling you, when things get that bad that we cannot even fundamentally agree that there should not be political violence, that the human life is sacred and it's meaningful, we have got problems. And I've seen it in these gang shootings for a long time. They just don't think about the carnage that they leave until it strikes their home personally. Then maybe they get an insight into it. But these thugs will kill you if you look at them sideways. If they want to steal your money and you don't give it to them, they'll just shoot you dead. And it's got to stop. Trump sees it. He stopped it in Washington. Now he's on his way to Memphis. And I got news for you, Governor Pritzker. It's going to be your turn in the barrel next, because we're coming to Chicago to stop the carnage. As well we should. All right, well, I've taken up plenty of time. That's the monologue for now. And I really appreciate your listening. And I would love for you to write me, johngordontruth@gmail.com. I really like to get mail from you. Will you write me? And if you'd like to do me a little teensy-weensy favor, would you go onto one of our social media platforms? That would be YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, X, or Getter. And just search for John Gordon Truth and subscribe to us if you would. It would mean the world to us, and it would allow us to have a greater reach and to get our message out to more people. You can also listen to us on Spotify, iHeart Podcast, and Apple Podcast, and Amazon Music. You can follow me on Facebook, X, TikTok, Instagram, and Getter. And you can see all of our past episodes on johngordon.tv. How did I do, Anthony? Whew. I finally read the cheat sheet. Are you proud of me? Didn't I do good? Anthony fusses at me every week. Just read the damn sheet, John. Or you can also listen to us on the John Fredericks Radio Network. We come to you on 22 stations in 8 cities. We are also on cdm.press. They rebroadcast our feed on their social media platforms and across their 13 digital platforms on the World Wide Web. So just please do me a little favor. Go subscribe today if you choose. If you think that we've earned that right to earn your subscription, it'll take you less time than we've read about social media. I promise you. And it's all free. It's all free. So just go and subscribe. Like us if you do. And thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate it. And I do hear from a fair number of you. And when you write me, it does validate what we do. And look, I don't care whether you praise us or condemn us. Just the fact that you listen is all I care about. And if you share a contrary opinion, I want to know it, because the name of the show is The Truth. And I truly do. Anthony and I work every week really hard to try and get it right. I really want to be a purveyor of the truth. That's all that really matters to me. All right, now with all that, what do you say, Anthony? Let's get to our first interview, and let's get right to Stacey Mincey and Carlos Toriello. I don't know if my friends in Georgia who are involved in elections integrity are listening today. I hope you are. But Stacey Mincey is the registrar from Screven County, Georgia, and she's doing what no other election official in the world or in the country has done yet. It's very innovative, and it just makes total sense. Thanks for listening. Let's get right to it. As our listeners know, I've worked on election integrity for a long time. These next guests, you're going to want to hear from. I am so excited. I am over the top with enthusiasm about what I have learned just in the last 24 hours. This is revolutionary, folks. Please welcome Stacey Scott and Carlos Toriello to The Truth. Welcome, Tracy and Carlos.
Hello.
So I think everybody that was around in 2020 was really frustrated and upset with the election results because we knew that our franchise had essentially been stolen. You have a solution for that problem, do you not? Carlos, tell us what you discovered, what you've implemented.
So I'm CEO at Simple Proof. What we've built is atop the Bitcoin blockchain, and it is a means by which we can facilitate everyone's ability to verify what happened in the digital world. This is particularly relevant for elections because on election night, any election produces some amount of physical data, even if you have paper ballots. At some point, something gets to the internet. And so our solution, which leverages the power of the Bitcoin blockchain, means that when something is created, it cannot change. So on election night, as things are created, if we lend this characteristic to the information, it means that anyone can verify for themselves that whatever election results, documents, or anything that was produced on election night have not been tampered with.
So you're telling me that you're going to use Bitcoin technology to validate or tabulate elections?
I'm telling you, we already have.
So, all right. So can you tell me how it works? Can you get into the weeds a little bit with us?
Of course. So for those that don't know how Bitcoin works, Bitcoin is a decentralized computer network that at this point is the most powerful computer network on the planet. And since inception in 2009, has proven that it is outside anyone's control. So as computers are across the world competing to generate the next Bitcoin block that generates the coins that form the network, those computers are involved in an intense competition that every year has raised the amount of hashing power or computers connected to the network to the point where now there are no computer networks on Earth that have a higher degree of security than Bitcoin. But in addition to the highest degree of security within computers, it's also beyond any one institution and person's control. And so what we do is when a Bitcoin transaction is sent, there is a means by which we can include information in a transaction. Think of it like when you're writing a check the old-fashioned way and you sign it with your pen. There's a memo space on a check. You could write, "Oh, this is my month's rent or my car payment." In every Bitcoin transaction, you can include a memo like that. So we include a mathematical proof where we connect all of the information that was generated at a particular moment in time, say on election night, to that Bitcoin transaction. And therefore, you would have the same degree of protection that currently is behind the $2 trillion worth of assets that Bitcoin has and that the Trump administration has added to the United States Treasury. That same power that protects those trillions of dollars can also protect the election records or really any public record. And so it's just via a specific Bitcoin transaction, we tie that information to everything that can be generated in a particular moment in time.
So the first precinct, or first jurisdiction, I should say, in the United States to use the blockchain for recording and tabulating elections is in Silicon Valley, California. Wrong. How about Screven County, Georgia?
Yes.
Stacey, Scott, you are a pioneer. I assume that you're starting your car with a broomstick these days because this has got to be shaking some people in their boots. Tell us how did you get turned on to this? And you have used it now in Screven County, Georgia, for elections, correct?
Yes, we've used it for 3 elections now. The first election we used it for was the November 2024 elections.
And you've had 2 more elections since then?
Yes, the Public Service Commissioner. So we had the June election and then the July runoff.
Got it. So how did you find out about it? How did you hear about this?
So I found out about it at a Bitcoin meetup. We actually had in Savannah, there's a Bitcoin group, and we have one of our meetups each month is online. And Carlos joined us for that one to explain what he was doing. And I was like, wait a minute, I do elections. So we started talking afterwards. And I brought it before my board, and the board agreed to have our election secured using the election results secured using Simple Proof. And so it was very simple, and it happened really fast too. So I believe the meeting that we discussed this at was in August, and we were able to get it in place, or August or September, and we were able to get it in place so that we were able to do this for the November election.
That is amazing. So can you walk us through mechanically, either or both of you? So I go into the polling place. Do you use a paper ballot as the initial input?
No.
What is the initial input?
Well, in Georgia, we use BMD's ballot marking devices, and then they print a ballot which is scanned. And so the data that I get comes from the scanner. The initial data I get comes from the scanner, and we use that information to tabulate our results on election night. So I then take that, and when I send that information to the state, I also send it to Simple Proof so that it goes to the Bitcoin blockchain.
Oh my gosh. So you're actually, if I understand you correctly, you're in effect at the tail end, you're using parallel systems to record the votes. Is that right? Or to report the votes?
I think that would be a fair way to put it. So it
goes on one system, you're sending it, you're using the BMB tabulating system. And does it count the votes? Does it record the votes?
The ballot marking device are basically one way to think of it is it's a pencil that makes sure that the voter can only vote for the right number of candidates. Like they can't vote for more candidates than they're supposed to. But the BMD is how they mark their ballot. But once they print out the ballot, the scanner, and then the scanner records the votes. And so that's what we use the data from the scanner to tabulate our election results.
Okay, so the votes get scanned in,
Yes.
and then where does the actual tabulation occur? Is that on the back end from the scanned ballot?
Yeah, so we get the memory cards from each of the scanners, and we upload that information into our elections computer, and that's how the votes are tabulated.
Now so there's so much to unpack here. A lot of people are really suspicious of that QR code that's on the printed ballot. Can you tell us what that's about, and what does that QR code include?
I am not an expert on that, but from the information that I've heard, the QR code basically explains the position of the votes, the position. So I'm not an authority on how that is done, but the QR code is basically tells which candidate is marked, which candidate the voter voted for. And they explained it somehow by using the positioning on the ballot, but it shows which candidate was marked on the ballot.
So, obviously I'm trying to use my small brain to understand the process and also look for where the weak points are in the process. Carlos, is that QR code, is that subject to being manipulated by people that want to engage in nefarious activity and perhaps skew the outcome of an election?
Well, I'm not an expert either in how the Georgia voting system works. Specifically, what we provide is that whenever a piece of information is created, it cannot change. So whether or not the way that it is handled in Georgia leads to any kind of issues, it's beyond really my understanding. It's more of what we have done with Stacey is the second time that we've implemented this security in an election system where once she reached her election results, that information could not change no matter what. But it's really the start of something where Stacey in her county sits at the county level. So her results go to the Secretary of State. What we've proven is you could do this at basically any county level without it being representing a prohibitive cost. But you could also then take this further upstream so that the machines themselves that are generating things like the QR codes, they could also contain this information so that whatever information is created when you vote or when the machine starts to count it, that is unchangeable, right?
I got it. But Mike, what I'm struggling with, I'm looking for the weak link here. And if you're not collecting the data off of the actual scanned image, but rather summary data that the wherever you're scanning it to actually does the computation, there is a potential weak link there if someone wanted to game the system. Is there not?
There's we haven't worked at that level, but we can. Right. So this is the first time this has been implemented at this stage of the voting process, and it can be brought further down into the process. In our opinion, ensuring that all digital information that is produced at all levels of the voting process is unchangeable will naturally benefit everyone in the voting process. Right. So technically, yes, if the information is changeable, then there is an opportunity for bad actors to take advantage of that, which is where by using the Bitcoin blockchain to ensure that all data as it's being generated is unchangeable, it naturally benefits and improves the security. Now, whether or not there are current vulnerabilities, it's out of my scope to say.
Well, so earlier on in my career, I led a software development team. And so I'm somewhat familiar with the process. I would like to offer you a change order, if I could, a modification of your software, and encourage you to take the actual paper ballot that the BMB,
EMD.
say it again.
To clarify, there is our software can work with anything. So, for example, the ballot marking device, the
Ballot marketing device.
BMD,
D.
that is a hardware
Thank you.
solution by other technology providers, and they can link into our system and integrate this kind of security system. So our solution can be adopted by all the ballot marking device operators so that at all points in the process it happens. So it's not a matter of changing our software. It's now that we've proven that it works at this level, there is no reason that it can't work at all levels.
Well, I got it. And I'm not, change is the wrong word, an enhancement to your product. I would offer up if that BMD system and wherever the back end is, once that ballot gets scanned, that's at the point that I'm suggesting that your system would read the actual ballot itself. Forget the QR code. Then what you've got two ledgers. One ledger comes from the existing system. The other ledger comes from your system, and they got to match or you can't validate the election. That's the Gordon method. What do you think?
So we can work with any kind of hardware system, and even our previous election use case prior to Screven County in Georgia was for the Guatemalan national elections. There, it's all paper ballots, and
Yeah.
the paper ballots are hand counted, and there are results at each table that are produced by citizens, and then those citizens take pictures of those documents. That's where we provided our software. So we can work in systems that use voting machines like the ballot marking devices or others, and we can also work with purely hand counted ballots. So the point is, it can integrate in the back end at all levels of the system, providing everyone this assurance and security that they can verify for themselves that none of the information has changed since it was created. It's up to the citizens then to verify, like you said, it's do the multiple audits to confirm that all the results are accurately counted.
Stacey, do you know what the name of the back end is for that system? When you scan the ballot, where does that actually go? Do you know the device or the product that is?
It's a Dominion.
It is to the Dominion system in Screven County's case. So
some counties in the state use other systems. I think ESS is one, but we use Dominion.
Gotcha. So, Carlos, what I'm suggesting is that when Dominion scrapes that data wherever they're getting it from, you scrape the actual entries on the paper ballot, and then you've got an absolute audit check, in my view. Now, I don't know, that might open up some other flaw, but not that I can think of. Stacey, I'm thinking that since this is so leading edge and that you've uncovered such an incredible way of securing the elections once they're tabulated, at least, that people from Atlanta, Brad Raffensperger and Gabe Sterling, I bet they drove down to Screven County to meet with you and to learn about this phenomenal new way of securing our elections. Did they?
Not yet. We have not had that happen yet. So I am trying to talk to people at the SOS office about what we did. Because I think it's something that all of the counties in the state should be doing. The important thing to note was this was done like immediately after I send the information to the Secretary of State's office on election night. I upload it to the blockchain. So that's the same as publishing the results, which is something that I can make the decision to do at my level. Anything that happens before that would have to come from higher up because of the way that we do things. Like that would have to be something that came from a state level. So, but this is something that the counties can choose to do on their own once the election results are tabulated.
So, having worked on the 2020 election, I've seen actual uh, what I consider to be proof. Um, it is not, we have not established chains of custody and the things that we would have to do to submit this in a lawsuit, but it is certainly more than enough proof to uh, encourage for people to look. But in the middle of the night, we saw Trump voter counts decremented and Biden's increasing. And there's belief that people were manipulating the voter results as they came into the Edison system. And we have spreadsheets that actually show that in with real time stamps to correlate with the time of day that occurred. So you've solved that problem. I mean, once you transmit that data to the Secretary of State, you simultaneously upload it to the blockchain. There can't be any monkeying around with the tabulations at that point, right?
Do you want to? That was one of that I was very excited about this, because knowing the controversy that had happened, with the election results in 2020, I was very excited to know that I could protect myself and my staff by and our county voters' rights by making sure that that we could verify that the numbers were what we had uploaded.
The tabulations were
that once we tabulate the numbers, that is what we had at that time, because it's not a one-time thing. So I'm not uploading these at the end of the night. I upload them every time I make an upload to the Secretary of State's office. We're required to make 3 uploads. I generally do more. I try to do it each time I have another precinct come in. So possibly I could have 7 or 8 uploads a night. And so I also send the information to the blockchain through Simple Proof every time I make an upload. So when I get my early voting results, when I send that to the Secretary of State, I send it to Simple Proof to put on the blockchain. And each time I make another upload, we do that, which also shows the progression of the votes over the course of the night.
To put it another way is, all election systems require multiple cogs in a giant wheel.
Sure.
And what we're passionate about, amongst other things, is to make sure that every individual part, every individual cog in that wheel that is doing its own work, once it receives any input, say votes from a precinct wherever, and it processes them and then has a product that then is used at a separate level, say at the state level, that the folks that are working within the system have full confidence and can verify for themselves that no changes had ever occurred. And specifically with working with Stacey, it's proving that even in a rural county that doesn't have an IT budget, we can provide this at scale, affordably, simply, so that it can be executed in real time, allowing everyone to be doing this at all levels of the voting system, meaning that nothing needs to change. Nothing can change if we empower those people at all levels with these tools.
Well, I think it is a giant step in the right direction. You're basically, again, securing the results. I think that again, this is just me, but if you could take it upstream and secure the data that's going into that, then I think you've got a sure enough winner, and you would have something that is would truly secure elections. Right now, you're securing election results, which is good. I think that's half the picture. Are you looking at perhaps going upstream?
Yes, and we definitely are. Our systems are now calibrated so that they can scale and can be plugged in with any type of hardware system. We just recently signed a contract with a electronic voting provider that works in other states. It hasn't been deployed, so I can't speak to that yet. But that proves that we can work with the machine manufacturers themselves, so that as the machines are doing any kind of work, you have the assurances and the guarantees that anyone can verify the information. So We
Right.
can work both upstream from the individual ballot level, as soon as any digital information is created, all the way to the state or even national scale where these things are tabulated. So it's providing an audit trail that anyone can then verify for themselves to ensure and guarantee that no changes occurred that weren't authorized.
Well, I think you're right. You are on the right path, and I am just so hopeful that there will be other adapters. I mean, Stacey, I mean, your election board must really be pretty sharp and pretty astute to have adopted this, the first jurisdiction in the United States of America to do so, from what I can learn.
Yes, and I was very excited that my board was willing to look at this. And the thing is, most of them are not really that technologically savvy. But they listened to Carlos and when he was explaining what he does and realized that it was an important way that we could make sure that our results were not changed. Because now, especially with AI, it is so easy for someone to alter things to make it look like the results could have been something other than what they were. And so I was really proud that they were willing to go with this and to do this to protect our results.
Well, I say Stacey Scott for SOS. I'll give you your first donation if you'll announce your candidacy here today.
Oh, I don't think I'm ready for that. I do enjoy working with elections at the local level, though.
Well, they are so lucky to have you. That
I mean, the thing with this is, and one of the important things is, I'm in a rural county that does not have a lot of resources, and we were able to secure the results for $12. I mean, that's the thing that's really important. It's not something that's super expensive that's going to put a burden on any county budget, because I'd even told my board that if they didn't go along with it, I was willing to do this on my own.
you were going to self-fund the $12.
Yeah, I was just going to pay the $12 to have it done because I thought it was important to cover my name since I'm the one signing so many of the results. And I mean, at this cost and how easy it is to use. The other thing is on election night, because I have a super small staff. It's not like some of the counties where they have whole teams of people doing things. I have my poll workers, but like as far as in my office, it's me, and then I have a part-time person. So on election night, it is really crazy. And we're trying to get everything done. This was a way I could secure those results, make sure that nothing was changed, and it took seconds. So it did not cause any problems.
There are a couple of things I'm curious about. When you do those uploads to the Secretary of State's office, is that after the polls have closed?
Yes. So after the polls have closed, and the poll workers bring the stuff back to us. In this case, they bring us the forms and they bring us the forms, the ballots, and the memory cards from the scanner. When I get those memory cards, I upload them into our tabulation system, tabulate the results, and then upload them to the Secretary of State's office.
So what is that tabulation system? Is that Dominion as well?
It is.
So I'm thinking that really, there's nothing like redundancy and a second system that can check the primary system. And, banks do that every day when they're counting money. And it seems to me that there's a real opportunity here to do this with elections, and that it would not be that difficult to do if the will is there to really secure the elections. Stacey, you explained to me on the phone, and I think it bears repeating, just so our listeners understand, and Carlos, when something goes to the blockchain, you said it then is decentralized. Will you explain exactly mechanically what we're talking about here and how that becomes so foolproof?
Sure. So Bitcoin has tens of thousands of people running it all over the world. So within a period of 10 minutes, any information that is on the blockchain on Bitcoin is replicated tens of thousands of locations worldwide, and none of them can change the information without everyone else knowing about it. So the only way to stop Bitcoin is to, in a matter of within 10 minutes, take out tens of thousands of computers that are in some places secret, under bunkers in space. And so it's just, the idea is it's impossible. It's the ultimate game of whack-a-mole. And so within 10 minutes, the information is everywhere on Earth, and therefore it's just impossible to delete by a single person. And that is why effectively it becomes immutable. You cannot change it without everyone on the network, and it's a global network, so it's not just the United States, it's literally every country on Earth that does this. So once that information gets there, it's impossible to take back.
It's like the teacher's report card. You know, I never did it, but I know someone who went to the teacher's desk and they changed the C to look like a B, and nobody was ever wise to it. But with the blockchain, they would have had to have changed that C to a B on about 1 million different report cards, right?
Without anyone realizing it, which is a impossible proposition.
Yes. So it is the penultimate security net for securing the results.
Bitcoin is by far the strongest computer network on the planet, and if folks take away anything, it's just to say that this is still us. We're a new company, and we're born out of the frustration of seeing that it seems like it's increasingly easy to lie and very hard to tell the truth. And fundamentally, what I want people to take away is that what we are building, and I would hope that people take a sense of hope that the truth can actually be protected affordably and simply and in real time. It does not cost money to do this. It just takes a matter of educating and adopting the right tools to do so, and basically requiring that all public information have this, so that it's not just elections. It's really, at the end of the day, when you think about it, all of our public records should be unchangeable. There is no reason why anyone should have the power to rewrite history.
Wow, I didn't even think about that.
Yes, so even in County, we're using it for more than just the election results now. Like during the Public Service Commissioner election, 30 days before the election is when we close the voter rolls. Like you don't move people. So at that point, once everyone was entered and we made sure that they were right up until that day, we hashed it. Carlos provided a way for me to do it without that information going on the internet. So no other company, no one else has access to my voters' information, but we were able to hash that file so that we can prove that that is what our voter registration was at the time that the polls were closed, or at the time that the rolls were closed for that election.
So and we don't know anything about that.
So how do you upload that to the blockchain but keep the information proprietary? I'm confused.
Sure. So not proprietary, it's confidential. So it's Stacey and certain parts of the government are allowed to have access to the voting rolls, but a company like ours, we have no reason to know this information. And so that's where a computer, it literally does computation. And so we grab that file, in this case containing the voting rolls, and well, we don't grab it, but the Stacey's computer, which already has it, hashes it and creates you can think of it like a fingerprint, as in any digital file is kind of like a person, and what we are taking is their fingerprints, and we're taking those fingerprints and registering them on Bitcoin so that all that we know is the fingerprint. So if I try to tell you something about a person by only using their fingerprint, I can't tell you if they're tall or if they're female or if they're short, right? A fingerprint doesn't say anything about a person. It's the same thing.
It sounds like you're effectively doing what I'm old, so I have a lot of memories that you didn't have an opportunity to acquire. But in the old days, if you wanted to send a letter to somebody and you didn't want it tampered with, you could take this wax seal and put it on the fold of the envelope and seal that letter. And the receiver would know that nobody had opened the envelope because the seal would not be broken and that they would be the one to break the seal. So you've effectively, it sounds like you just digitally seal the voter rolls. And if you ever were called to task, you could likewise unseal them and prove that this was the voter roll that you effectively certified.
Yes.
Indeed, but even better because it's digital, so it's trivial to do this, and it doesn't require sending it physically, right? It can go throughout
Right.
the internet, and it's protected, and no one knows the information except that Stacey and people with the proper credentials to view the information, they can do so.
Fantastic. Well, what questions did I fail to ask that you might want to put on the table? Is there anything else that you want to tell us about this leading edge, brilliant concept that you've come up with?
I think the main thing that I just want to reiterate is that this is so simple and affordable for counties to use that there is really no reason that it could not be used widespread to secure our election results. I mean, at this point, like right now, every county could easily do this.
That does lead me to my next question, Carlos. How many different elections offices are you speaking with, and are you marketing this product nationwide in the U.S.?
So we've been hard at work to, if our position was, if it can work for Stacey in Screven County, Georgia, and it can meet those intense requirements of has to be affordable, can't take more than a few seconds, etc., then we have something that can really scale. And we're just about ready to publish it on our website for anyone to get a membership and sign up and start using it. We'll have a free monthly membership that allows people to use this the freemium version. For folks that are using a lot of this, then they can sign up and pay a monthly credit card subscription. And if there are people that need to use this, say at a significant scale, like for example the Georgia State Archives or the Florida State Archives, which
Sure.
have hundreds of millions of documents, we can also do that, but that's a separate type of product, right? So we are basically in the next few months going to launch this for anyone to sign up, so that it doesn't require me personally helping and walking hand in hand with you, but rather everything is seamless and intuitive so that you can sign up. I would say go to simpleproof.com and sign up on our website, and very soon you'll get a notice that you can start using it.
Well, I will absolutely do that and encourage our listeners to do that as well. Have you had any high level conversations in our country with deploying this technology?
So we are getting ready to do that this coming month. So you jumped the boat ahead of the line, John. And but very soon we are reaching out to multiple states through different networks. But if you have ideas on who we should talk to and present this tool to, please reach out.
Well, I do actually. And I'm going to do that on your behalf with your permission. President Trump wants to go to paper ballots. And I get the idea. For one thing, it really all but eliminates mail-in ballots. I think there will probably still have to be exceptions for old people like me that may not be able to get to the polls, even though I don't fall into that category yet. But our armed forces that are overseas that may want to vote, I think we need to just get back to the old standard where mail-in ballots was an exception, and it had to be for limited purposes. But then paper ballots and maybe eliminate early voting. I think those are very positive moves in the right direction to securing our elections. Do you have any thoughts on those, Stacey?
I mean, so I will say, in my experience, when we do our risk limiting audit, we have 100% accuracy. So I am not as concerned about the tabulation of the votes, and I'm all for making sure that everybody who is eligible to vote is able to vote, and I do think that the early voting gives that chance.
Yeah, but the only problem is it just opens the opportunity for devilment.
So I'll say our early voting is run exactly like our election day voting is done. It's just done over the period of time. I agree that understand the concern with the absentee ballots, and I think if there are ways, anything that can be done to secure that, to make sure that only that everyone who is eligible to vote is able to vote, and exactly that, like nobody.
I'm down with that. I'm not encouraging voter suppression at all.
Right.
But to me, I think the model's got to be turned upside down. I don't think voter access is nearly as important as voter security, as the election security. And what we saw in 2020, everybody had access. Homeless shelters, UPS stores, churches, abandoned apartment buildings, and not in Screven County. Okay, Stacey, you are the election security in Screven County. I don't know you well, but I've known you long enough, 24 hours, and talked to you enough to have an intuitive sense that you're a very good, honest person. Screven County's lucky to have you. In Fulton County, where I reside, not so much. I mean, I can tell you that 4 people saw a ballot full of pristine absentee ballots that looked like they had been filled out by a printer, untouched by the human hand. They were not folded. They were not taken out of envelopes. They were just sitting on a pallet. We also know that Fulton County bought 20,000 absentee ballots 10 days before the election. Now, I know that as a fact because the manager of the elections sat in a deposition with Bob Shealy and told him that under oath. And Shealy said, well, why did you buy those absentee ballots? I don't remember. Okay, so I think there's a pretty strong inference that it was so they could cheat. And so that's what you've got to eliminate. And as long as we got Stacey at the helm, I'm not worried. But if we've got people that are willing to cheat at the helm, then we got a hell of a problem in this country. And the franchise is the foundation of our republic. You erode that, you erode our republic. So,
well, let me just say, it's also important that.
Go ahead, Carlos. Sorry.
Oh, just that people like Stacey, because Stacey's not the only one. Screven County is not the only place that has high quality people. It's
not at all.
They're everywhere, and it's,
we're not worried about the high quality people.
Making sure that there are so many issues to work on, but at the very least, that every single honest, hardworking person that is involved in the process, their work is immutable and unchangeable, so that they can verify for themselves that all of the sacrifices that they did to create the election system, they can go back and check for themselves that at least their portion of the work is solid, and they can verify it, right?
100%. Well, that's very well said. So here's my deal. Here's my offer. Do you ever watch the All-in-One podcast? It's
Yes.
the number 1 podcast in the world. And David Sachs, who is the crypto czar and has a cabinet office in the executive office building next door to the White House, is on that podcast. And next week in Los Angeles, I will be attending the All-in-One Summit. And guess who's going to be there? David Sachs. And guess what? The first thing I'm going to talk to him about if I get the chance. If that is okay with you, I'm going to give him a 30,000 foot view based on what I've understood from you, and encourage that we take a very serious, hard look at how to secure our elections, perhaps using this technology.
Please do so.
Yeah.
You got it. I'll report back to you on that. And again, thank you. You're listening to The Truth with John Gordon. We've had the pleasure of talking to Stacey Scott. She is the head of elections in Screven County, Georgia, and Carlos Toriello, and he is the CEO of simpleproof.com. They are on their way. I do believe this is the most exciting development. And I've studied this stuff, folks, for 4 solid years. I think they are on their way to perhaps saving our republic by securing our elections. I am extremely excited about the possibilities. And I just so appreciate your coming on and talking to us about this. We're on the John Fredericks Radio Network every Saturday and Sunday from noon to 2 in Nashville, Atlanta, Richmond, Norfolk, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and Morgantown, West Virginia. We also come to you on CDM Press on their 13 digital platforms. They care about the truth just like we do, and they take our feed and put it out on their social media. Speaking of which, you can watch us on social media. We're on all the normal ones that you can think of: Facebook Live, X, TikTok, Instagram, Getter, and YouTube Live. And that's the truth. And I'm John Gordon. Stick with us. We got another exciting guest coming right up. Wayne Morrow is president of the John Birch Society, and he joins us here on The Truth. Welcome.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about the John Birch Society. I don't want to start off on a sour note, but I have to tell you that I've always had sort of a perhaps misimpression of the John Birch Society as being anti-Semite and racially charged. Am I wrong?
You're wrong. Absolutely.
Am I the only person who's had that misconception?
Maybe in the past, because that was done so folks wouldn't listen to what we have to say. Kind of like what happened to Trump. Don't listen to this guy. He's a fascist. When you're over target, you get all the arrows, right? So, So that's exactly what happens. It's so I could read to you, what we believe in, and just answer that question. And they've known about this. It says, we believe in the dignity of the individual. We welcome people of all ethnic, racial, religious backgrounds, judging only by character and ability, as we've been just of ourselves. Our common bond is a love for liberty and rejection of totalitarianism under any label. That's what we believe in. That's one of our main tenets. We have all bunch. We believe in an American system of government, constitutional republic, not a democracy, the finest ever developed by man. And our job is to keep on preaching and teaching our Republic Constitution. But because we point out the people now they call the globalists and the deep state, they don't like that. So they had to make sure that we'll do some incorrect smearing so nobody listens any longer. So that's why that baggage is kind of disappearing, because over a period of time, what we talked about is now happening.
So you think that this label was attached to you surreptitiously and for negative, bad reasons?
Absolutely right. Yeah, the first person that did that was a communist party called People's World in California. Don't listen to those guys. We're not communists. Yeah, they were.
Yeah. And
then Buckley came about. We found Buckley was a paid shill for the establishment, and we were exposing the same folks that are supporting him. And he goes, oh, don't listen to them. Even though our founder, Mr. Welch, in 1958, I support him financially to get the New Republic going. And he turned around and stabbed Mr. Welch in the back. So then we find out the guy was really not a good guy at all. He was a pipe popper for the establishment. But, that's what we see.
You mentioned our republic. And, on television, on the news all the time, you hear about democracy, democracy, democracy. They're a threat against democracy.
Oh, yeah.
But you're saying that they would be threats against the republic. Explain why that distinction is so important.
Oh, of course. Well, that's the republic, which we are. The word republic is in our Constitution. There's no word democracy, any state constitution as well. It does not exist. That word doesn't exist in our Constitution for good reason. Republic means res publica, means ruled by law. Democracy is majority rule. For example, if we're in a room, there's 5 guys in a room, 1 lady, we decide that we're all going to vote and shave the woman's hair, give her a brush haircut. 5-1, she loses, get the scissors out. That's a democracy. But if we had a republic, she says, no, you can't do that to her. She has her rights. She has law. You can't just do that on your own. So we're protected by law. Big difference. Res publica. And that's a key, and not a democracy. Democracy leads to totalitarian anarchy than totalitarianism. Even our founding fathers said in the Federalist Papers, democracy dies a violent death. And we're seeing that. We're seeing they drive that home. They don't want people to know we're a republic. It's not semantics. It's for real. That's why it's in our Constitution. So for fun, you could do this later on. Ask people, pay them $100 so they can find the word republic in their state constitution. They're not going to find that word. It's always a republic, not a democracy.
So you think Donald Trump is a peacemaker. Tell us about it.
I think he's trying really hard, and that's a tough job. It really is. I mean, he's got to manage a lot of personalities and a lot of things going on.
Personalities from two people that hate each
Oh,
other.
oh God, can you imagine? I mean, this is like a no-win thing. But I'd say he has the right mentality and motive, but you want to get involved in foreign entanglements. That's what our Constitution. Don't get too involved in all that stuff, but you want to have that good, bring people together for peace, but avoid foreign entanglements because that's a no-win situation. But yes, I think he's trying desperately to have a peaceful world. Nothing wrong with that. That's pretty much of a valor characteristics of him. I really think that I admire him for that task.
I think the majority of people in America would certainly want peace,
Yes.
and there's really nothing in it for us to want war,
Right.
except for the military-industrial complex
Absolutely.
and the people who spend their lives and livelihoods
Mhm.
preparing for war.
Right.
I think therein lies the problem, doesn't it?
Yes, of course. That's been around. The military industrial complex around for a long time. The only thing that advances it is money, and they kill a lot of innocent men and women. That's what
Yeah.
always happens. It's been going on forever. Yeah.
Do you have a sense of where the Ukraine and the Russian conflict stands as we speak? We felt like we were headed towards a trilateral summit. It doesn't sound like that's going to happen now anytime soon. Do you get that sense?
I get that sense. Yeah. Yeah. There's actually an agenda that we're not aware of. I can tell you that. Putin wants to save face, and the Ukrainians, they've been on the target list of the Russians for a long time. They're usually the breadbasket of Europe, so at least in that part of the world. And so, yeah, there are a lot of agendas going on that we're not privy to, but I think it's egos now. And it's a shame. A lot of innocent people are being killed. They're the cannon fodder, and the political games being played. That's the tragedy of all wars, right? The pundits always come out of it, but poor people in their countries end up dying, paying the price. There's no win in that whole thing. So I think it's egotistic, egos and pride are hard at work here.
Yeah, and I always tell my kids, ego is the enemy. So it's just really a lot better to be humble. But I'm not sure that it doesn't go beyond ego with Putin. I think he really wants the territory that he's fought so hard to claim.
Yeah, I think he probably historically he thinks he owns some of that, and there's some strategic reasons for it, and that's probably part of it. But we follow it and we see it, and we've seen all kinds of wars in the past, and it doesn't end well. Never ends well. Right now, they're destroying Ukraine. They're actually obliterating that place. So, and we end up putting money rebuilding the country again, right?
Yeah.
Let me see how that works again. Huh? We've done that. How many times have we done that, brother?
Lots.
Really? Is that what we're really doing here? Yeah. Okay. So like a lot more to this game. A lot more to this game.
So, do you feel like that we'll get peace in with Ukraine and Russia unless Putin gets some territory?
My personal educated guess, I think there's going to be some horse trading going on. I think that's what's going to have to happen, and I don't know what that's going to look like. But I can tell you, we have our own issues in our own country, right? We have lots of illegal invasions. Period up. We have our own problems in the United States. We have to focus in on home. Our focus should not be there; it should be at home. We mentioned this before we got on. We have an election coming up. And we have a lot of people running around the United States who came here illegally. I call them the invaders. They weren't leaving here for any reason to be invading by the globalists to destroy our country. And they're doing it in Europe as we speak. And you're sure you see that. That's all done by on purpose to destroy the culture, to rebuild into a new world culture. The only way you can do that here in the United States is tear down all the institutions and start all over again. That's really the war. We've been in a war for a long time here. And in Europe, I have friends there. I used to work there. They're under tremendous pressure. And they're just being destroyed. And people can't walk the streets, and especially UK or Ireland. And it's awful. I mean, but it's all done by design, by their leaders
So when you're saying that we are at war, I think that calls for the question of who are we at war with? I mean, who are we battling?
The globalists, the guys who want world government. That's who we're battling, and it's all the UN agenda. They talk about it. How do you get world government unless you destroy all the past? That's why they don't teach us history anymore, my friend. They want to know our past. I talk to the Europeans, they tell me, we love our country, we love our heritage, we're losing our sovereignty, and we don't like that any longer. It does not work. The French want to be French. The
Yeah.
Germans love their culture. I live with those people. The English love their British pound and all their heritage. And the United States has America. We love ours. Why would we want to destroy it? Our history is our identification. And so, how can I make it all brand new? I have to wipe it all clean. So, I hire people to come in and maim, destroy, and take over and start all new. That's what we're seeing here. And I think President Trump saw that. He certainly slowed down the invasion to a trickle, taking people out. Here, people complaining they're shoving them back to their own countries again. Can you imagine how crazy that is? How Americans would even believe that? What's wrong with us? Why can't we see that?
I asked myself the same question.
What are they thinking? I have no answer. I go around the United States and I talk to people. And John, I'll tell you this. I asked the question, when is the last time you read the U.S. Constitution? I'd say 2% of the crowd says yes. Now, here's one's going to kill you, right? I asked the question, when is the last time you read your state constitution? And the answer is 0. So now my question is, Congress makes the laws, correct? Correct. So then how do you base your next election on what? So is it a beauty contest? Maybe it is. Is it a Valentine's card mentality? Maybe it is. Maybe someone tells a joke, I really like him. But are they based it on constitutional reality? Probably not, because they've not been taught the Constitution. So we've been busy re-educating Americans at who we are and educating them on the Constitution so they can make right decisions and have constitutional-minded representatives. As I mentioned, Congress makes the laws. You saw the State of the Union. Think about it. Half of those people sat down and never applauded for the Americanist things that he said. How do these people get in office? Is half our country that messed up? Really? What's wrong with us? That's the thing that really bothers me. And we've been busy saying, wake up. You're giving your country away. Wake up. You're handing it over to the other folks. How can you stand by and watch that happen? They don't know their country. They don't know the Constitution. All they do is complain.
Well, I felt like that the American people did show up on November the 5th, 2024, one of the largest turnouts ever in an American national presidential election. Yep. But the job's far from over, is it?
It's ongoing. Well, they found our country was in deep trouble with the last administration. I mean, with 4 more years of that, we'd be done, right? They said, whoop. So Americans respond with their faces against the mirror, right? Like they can't go any farther. Yeah, but it's still there. And as I mentioned, now that Trump is around, they want on pause. As you know, the left is hard at work trying to get back to power again. Did we do that once before? We all went to sleep, and all of a sudden we got the Biden administration. So my warning is to the Americans who hear this, act like you lost. Don't stop. The next election is going to be really important because it'll change the way our Congress looks. If we lose Congress, all those EOs that President Trump put in are meaningless because they won't become law. That's what we need. So you can have him do all the wonderful things. If Congress doesn't support it, it's not going anywhere. That's critical.
Well, for the last 23 years, the party in power has lost the midterms every opportunity that there was to hold the Congress. So do you think it'll be different in 2026?
As of now, I don't know. I'm hoping not. I'm trying to change that in our own organization, trying to go out and teach people, wake up. And your show and other ones we get on to encourage, I call it the MAGA people, right? Who are stood up, is not to go back to sleep. This is the worst thing you can do. Who is your representative and how they vote? You go to our website, thenewamerican.com. We have a thing called the Freedom Index. It prints off every congressional scorecard, not only for Congress, but over every state representative in the United States and how they vote. You can print it off, go visit your state legislators or their staffers in Congress or the states and see how they vote. 100% constitutionally or zero. Here's a tragedy. Most people don't know who their representatives are. They have no idea how they voted, but they sit and complain about it. So we give them the tools to say, go see them. Hey, we hired you to uphold the Constitution. Why are you doing that? Well, guess what? I talk to congressmen often. And you know what they tell me? Nobody calls their office. Nobody visits them. We must be doing a good job.
Mm.
The answer is no. We go see them and say, look, this is what we're passing around your district because you're not voting constitutionally. You have a choice. Either they get more constitutionally minded because they want to keep their job, or we find somebody else that will. So the thing is that is hope. But it's amazing to see most America is on remote control. They'll tell you more about a football score stats than how their congressman votes or visit them. Isn't that a shame?
It is, and I appreciate your coming on and sharing that with us, Wayne Morrow. He's the CEO of the John Birch Society. And where can people follow you and keep up with your work?
Yeah, we have a social account at jbs.org. We have the newamerican.com, and you can go to our website, thejbs.org. You can have a free course on the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. We have lots of videos. We talked about immigration, about climate change, all that information to educate you really what's going on. All I could say is that people who hear this, Americans, have to get involved in the next election. There's some strategic governor races happening, and this is where we go to sleep. And that's what you said. They lose on purpose because they think they've won. Yeah. Act like you lost. The other side's working overtime. Believe me, they want power back again. Don't you see that?
Absolutely. All right, Wayne Morrow, thank you for coming on The Truth today. We appreciate it. And I'm going to go check out newamerica.com for sure.
I wish you would. Thank you for the opportunity.
Our pleasure. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your weekend.
As well. You bet. Thank you.
September the 10th, 2025 is likely to be one of those days that goes down in history, and it will be remembered by where were you when you heard that Charlie Kirk had been assassinated? Well, I remember exactly where I was. I was having lunch with my middle son and my wife in Norman, Oklahoma, at a very nice restaurant when the news broke, and we were just sucker punched, like somebody had punched us in the gut. All three of us had the same reaction. At first, we were in denial. Well, he'll surely be okay, just like Trump was grazed in Butler, Pennsylvania. The first instinct was to pray and hope that he would be okay. And it was not very long after that that we found and heard the tragic news that Charlie Kirk had indeed died. It was sad, and it's still sad. What is equally sad is the unmitigated hate and mockery that has followed his death by certain lunatics on the far left. And Charlie's death really brought these people to life. We knew they were there, but I don't think we knew just how vile and bad they were. We suspected it. Now we have proof positive. They talk about hate. They claim that Charlie Kirk engaged in hate speech. Help me understand, where is this coming from? Was it his love of country, his respect for the flag, his belief in God, his belief in family, his belief in free speech, his exercise of free speech, his mobilization of tens of thousands of college-age people coast to coast, bringing them into the political system as voters and as electors? Is that how we should define hate? I don't think so. But if you want to look at hate, just watch this series of clips that we've assembled for you.
Charlie was someone who once said, guns save lives after a school shooting. Charlie was someone who was willing to debate and downplay the death of George Floyd, downplay slavery and what Black people have gone through in this country. There are a lot of people who are out there talking about him just wanting to have a civil debate.
Complete rewriting of history.
What do you say to people who are saying Democrats need to lower the temperatures?
Oh, please. Right. Why don't you start with the President of the United States, right? And every ugly meme he has posted and every ugly word.
I think there are people who are fomenting it in this country. I think the president's rhetoric often foments it. We've seen the January 6th rioters who clearly, have tripped a new era of political violence.
Not everyone took to his words or his rhetoric. At times they were offensive to specific communities. But with that said, this is not the time to focus on that. We are focused on this tragedy.
He's been one of the most divisive, especially divisive younger figures in this, who is constantly sort of pushing this sort of hate speech. Hateful thoughts lead to hateful words, which then lead to hateful actions.
These people are out of their minds. I don't have the words, and I'm sure you our listeners feel the same. It is so disgusting that they would abuse and disrespect someone like Charlie Kirk, who was savagely murdered for no apparent reason. My wife says that he was assassinated because he was having too large of an impact, and that the liberal lefts felt that they had to get in his way. We'll talk about that some more in a moment. But fortunately, there has been a lot of pushback towards these hateful, mean-spirited people. In fact, just watch some of these clips.
For my job. I was just fired from 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 my job. Now I have nothing but this. I have nothing but this website. I have nothing anymore. I have nothing. I have nothing anymore. I have nothing anymore. I have nothing anymore. I have nothing anymore.
I just got fired. And honestly, when they told me, I was like a little like, eh. But then after, I was like, F this.
What the f are you supposed to do when you get fired? You just take it? You just take it like a man?
No, you don't take it. You look at your behavior and try and figure out, how did you contribute to your getting fired? These people made just devastatingly over the top disparaging words about someone who had just been murdered in a country where we celebrate free speech. So let the accountability continue. Here's another clip that just happened this past week with a student on a Texas university. For those of you on the radio that don't see our live stream, this is a young man on a college campus emulating Charlie Kirk after he had been shot. It is disgusting. It is inexcusable. You know, when George Floyd did die, people on the right did not celebrate his death. They did not blame him for his death. There were things that contributed to his death, like a cocktail of illegal drugs that were in his system. I think that's fair to point out. But there was no mockery. There was no disrespectfulness shown towards him. This is not how we bring a country together. Now, here's Governor Abbott in response to that individual.
Texas State University facing new pressure from Governor Greg Abbott to expel a student over a video on social media showing someone making light of Charlie Kirk's death during a memorial for him on campus. The governor reposted the video, saying this conduct is not accepted at our schools. Expel this student immediately. In a statement, Texas State University President Kelly Danfus called the video disturbing, writing, quote, "If this individual is found to be affiliated with Texas State, appropriate action will be taken. Let me be clear, expressions that glorify violence or murder have no place on our campuses."
In my view, these people are just pure out and out lunatics. They are insensitive, and they're just not mentally stable, as I think is self-evident from the first young lady who had lost her job, rightfully so. Another person lost their job who worked at Office Depot. Someone came into Office Depot to get a poster printed with Charlie Kirk's picture and the dates of his life. She said that they would not print the picture because it was political propaganda. Let that sink in. Well, after there was an outcry of outrage, she was fired. Thank goodness. Good riddance. There has been other consequences of this, not all bad. Turning Point USA, which had roughly 1 million members, has mushroomed overnight to more than 12 million donors worldwide. There have been protests in support of Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA all over the world, including this past week in Great Britain, where an estimated 1 million people took to the streets chanting, "Charlie, Charlie." We saw that played out in this country, where 7 or 8 NFL football teams had moments of silence and an opportunity for people to show their support and grieve collectively for Charlie Kirk. There are also applications for 36,000 new Turning Point chapters across colleges, universities, and high schools all across the nation. I don't think this was God's plan by any means, although we are acquainted with the expression that the good die young. Maybe God wanted Charlie sitting next to him rather than being on earth. Maybe he felt that Charlie had fulfilled his purpose in life. I don't really believe that. I believe that God is grieving with us for what happened to Charlie. I do believe that Charlie is now in heaven as his reward for having lived a good life, having lived as a role model for tens of thousands of young people. But I do think that God is helping us make the most of this horrible situation by bringing people 12 million strong to support Turning Point and applications for 36,000 new chapters. This is the way we push back. This is the way we appropriately fight. 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 And we will continue to do so. Now, Emerald Robinson, who is a national news correspondent, she was formerly a correspondent on Newsmax and is now on Mike Lindell television, wrote a very compelling Substack this week, raising significant questions about the shooting. Well, I interviewed Emerald, and we're going to bring you that interview a little later in the program. I think you're really going to want to stick around and listen to it. There are a lot of questions about what happened in Utah on that college campus on September the 10th. There was one crazy guy that has shown up in a lot of different places, a lot of protest. And as soon as the shots rang out, or the shot, he yelled, "Shoot me, shoot me, shoot me." people who have watched that have labeled him a decoy. He clearly got police officers and law enforcement focused on him rather than the shooter. What would motivate him to do that? Why? And those words, how strange. There are a lot of questions about how the gun got up on the roof. There are a lot of questions about how the gun got off the roof and why it showed up in the middle of the woods. As Emerald Robinson pointed out, we have not been given any information about the bullet. Does the FBI have it? Has it been retrieved? Does it match the gun? And then in the moments immediately after Charlie's assassination, the evidence was not tampered with. It was actually destroyed. A camera that was positioned in the tent that showed clearly what happened was immediately removed. The tent was deconstructed, and now new construction has started to take place at the crime scene. These are very irregular circumstances, and Emerald Robinson helps break it all down and has some very compelling observations and facts surrounding it. Did Tyler Robinson, no relation to Emerald, obviously, did he act alone? Was he part of a network of people? Who provided the money? The money for the gun, for the getaway, for the ancillary things that went into this? These are all serious questions that need to be answered. I would also like to know, what do you think? What do you think about the despicable hate speech that followed Charlie's assassination? Should the people be held accountable? Is it fair that they were fired in the aftermath of making these horrible, disrespectful statements about someone savagely murdered? What do you think? I'd like to know your opinion. And what do you think about Elizabeth Warren's comments and Governor Pritzker's comments? Send them to me, johngordontruth@gmail.com. I promise to read your email and I will respond to each and every one of you. In summary, I'm just going to say that if we cannot, as a nation, as a one giant community, agree on the sanctity of life and condemn violence at any and every turn, we are in a pile of trouble. And I think that we are at a point right now, an inflection point, if you will, where people have either got to come together and resolve that we cannot engage in violence, or else there's going to be hell to pay. And I worry about the future of our country right now on that very thing. Can we agree? Can we get past this and somehow find some peace and harmony among us? It's way overdue. And I think President Trump needs to be the person to start that conversation and to lead us in that direction. But this is a sad day in America, and it is the establishment of a new low bar. That if you have political beliefs, religious beliefs, beliefs about the family, that you cannot say those things without fear of being the subject of violence. That cannot occur. It does not matter your political affiliation, your race, your gender. We have to be able, as an organized, lawful society, to first at least agree on the sanctity of life. And that is an undercurrent that is part of this conversation that is really scary. A lot of these bad actors that are uttering these despicable comments and mocking the dead reflect no respect for human life or dignity. And that's got to stop. So today, I am beginning what I hope will be a movement. I hope it will become an idea that can be advanced. I hope you will help me advance it. I don't think any man or woman in this country should be allowed to attend college on a publicly funded scholarship unless they agree to serve in the armed forces. All these people who are running around shouting and demonstrating and demeaning the life and work of Charlie Kirk, I think would look at it very differently if they had some self-discipline, if they had had an opportunity to reflect on their own values and character. And that's what the service will do for you. Now, I did not serve in the armed forces. I wish that I had. My brother did, and he did so with distinction. Zell Miller told me, he was the former governor and United States senator from the great state of Georgia. He told me over lunch one day that the Marines literally saved his life, that he was on a very bad course and a bad track. So, ladies and gentlemen, I favor reinstituting the draft in the United States. I think every fit man or woman between the ages of 18 and 22 should have to serve in our military for at least a year or two, just like they do in Russia and many other nations in the world. It's time. And I don't know how to touch these young people, who many of whom do not have a role model, many of whom don't know how to find the church, many of whom lack self-discipline. Clearly, they lacked respect. I don't know how to get to them, except perhaps through a mandatory draft. It's the best strategy that I've been able to come up with. Tell me what you think. Write me, johngordontruth@gmail.com. Let me know what you think. I personally believe that it would have the beneficial effect of instilling patriotism, and we know that Paris Island would be a good place for some of these people to get a real dose of reality. I think it's well overdue, and I think that that would be a great strategy. And just say, hey, you want a college education? You want a free ride to get a trade? No problem. Just report to your nearest enlistment office, and we will certainly help you make a good life for yourself, just as soon as you help make this country great. And that's the truth. And I'm John Gordon. Thanks for joining us today. Stay tuned now for a great program, including the great Emerald Robinson. And we're going to break down Charlie Kirk's death and assassination and who may have played a role in it, in addition to Tyler Robinson, as well as breaking down the events of that tragic day. As a nation, we are experiencing the three phases of grief. First, we were in denial. Now we're grieving, and a little bit of anger is starting to set in as we watch the reactions of people across the nation. It is shocking, and it does make you angry. Would you agree with that, Emerald Robinson?
Yeah, I've been angry for a while, honestly, John.
I feel you. Well, Emerald is a national correspondent. She had a gig on Newsmax for a good while until she started telling the truth about the vaccine. And now she's on Lindell TV, and she is also a friend of mine. Emerald, welcome to The Truth. You wrote a Substack today about what happened to Charlie Kirk, and it certainly, a lot of it had the ring of truth to it. You want to step us through the irregularities that you've uncovered, the things that don't pass the smell test?
Yeah, thanks for having me, John. I really appreciate it, and it's good to see you again. What I would say, I wrote this Substack first thing this morning, and it was before the local law enforcement and the state attorney general, or excuse me, the district attorney did their press conference. But I still didn't get answers to the questions that I put in that Substack. I think the questions that I wrote about this morning still stand despite today's press conference. Now, I will start out with the first one being Why does none of this ring true to me? Okay. And that this Robinson kid is the actual assassin. Well, first of all, I admittedly was watching the press conference on Fox News, and John Roberts of Fox News, the Canadian anchor, former VJ, said that this is a pretty open and shut case based on what he just heard. And John Roberts is always wrong. So that's number one.
Okay.
But no, in all seriousness, I still think my main question is, where's the murder weapon in the videos? Okay. We know what law enforcement is telling us about the murder weapon they found in the woods. But if you look at the videos, John, and you talk to, you're down in, you're from the South. I'm sure you're familiar with some of the guns. And I talked to a lot of my cousins. I talked to a lot of former military members. I talked to gun experts. Everyone that I spoke with agrees that there's no way he had that gun in his pants, right? Like they said, you don't see the gun in any of the videos. They say there's no way, because of the complexity of that and the age of that gun, he could have assembled that on the roof. Okay, fast forward to when he jumps off the roof, right? That's the most infamous video of the shooter, the alleged shooter. There's no gun in that video, right? He didn't take a gun off the roof.
Didn't he drop something to the ground that?
It was a bag.
Yeah.
It was his bag, but it wasn't big enough to carry that kind of gun from everybody that I spoke to about it.
All right.
And they suddenly find it in the woods, assembled. A lot of people ask questions, especially hunters, about the scope. So that's kind of number one for me. Where was the gun in the video? Where's the autopsy? I think if you look at multiple angles of, and I unfortunately have done so now to my chagrin, but I felt like it was important to look at the video of the actual wound as it was being made. You have to question, and I've seen a lot of first responders online and nurses say that it looks more like an exit wound from the front than the entry wound. And there's several angles of the video that does call that into question. It doesn't, you could say it looks like in some of the video that the bullet's actually entering in the back of the neck and throwing him forward.
I had not heard that or thought about it, but I will tell you.
Go back and watch it.
That I have very consciously thought that the story that we've been told, that he had on a bulletproof vest and that the bullet hit the vest, ricocheted and hit him in the throat, it just doesn't ring true to me, frankly. That a bullet would ricochet off the bulletproof vest and go up and into the throat. I've had serious questions about that, frankly.
Well, and if you look at other pictures of Charlie as he was engaging with the crowd and he was throwing the hats, he had on a white T-shirt. You could see his nipples. It doesn't look like he had on a bulletproof vest in certain lighting as he was standing and throwing the hat. So I think that into question.
Jeez. I don't want another conspiracy theory. I just want something that's simple and irrefutable, and it feels like here we go again. And
what it is, here we go again.
I want the truth, but I just wish that for once we could get something that was clear and indefensible, and it seems like that's not the case.
Well, it is here we go again, John, because there are too many parallels between the Butler assassination and the Butler assassination and the attempt on Charlie Kirk's life, right? Because let's think about it. In both instances, they cleared up the crime scene. Now, if you're an investigator, the first thing, the first rule is you never tamper with or you never clean a crime scene. And that's what they did in both of these cases,
No
John.
question.
Remember, in Butler, they washed down the roof.
That is undeniable. You are 100% correct.
And now in the case of what's going on in Utah, they're actually doing construction on the site. They immediately started taking everything down in Utah. You just wouldn't do that John. That is literally the biggest no-no in investigations. So why are they doing? They did that with Butler. And with there's so many parallels between Butler and Charlie Kirk's assassination. But of course, we shouldn't be that surprised that there was an attempt on Charlie Kirk's life, and unfortunately, it was tragically successful because there's been no accountability. There's been no real investigation into the Butler assassination. In fact, 2 attempts on the president's life prior to this assassination of Charlie Kirk.
Well, we've done a lot of reporting on Butler. That is laughable, frankly, that the official story that we've been told. There are so many irregularities, and they say, oh, well, these were just mistakes. Well, how many mistakes do you have to have before it adds up to be intent? And that's the point that I've made. And the AGR building was intentionally removed from the security circle. It's like a piece of pie that is intentionally cut out. And as we now know, we know from Dealey Plaza that rooftops are incredibly leave the person exposed. And so why would you not cover the rooftop in Butler? But Charlie, unlike what some people are saying, was not a political figure. He was a free thinker, and he was expressing his freedom of speech. He had his political biases, but he has never been elected to office, and he's never run for office. Not yet.
He was definitely on his way to potentially being, and I believe that was his end game. I mean, there had been some talk about him being a future VP running mate.
Yeah. Well, like yourself, I'm sure you knew Charlie. I've known Charlie for 8 years, and I've seen him a lot over that period of time. I asked him point blank when he came to the Palm Beach Republican Party Club if he would consider himself to be a candidate for vice president before JD was picked. And he was addressing our organization. He kind of laughed. He said, well, there's one major problem with that. I'm only 31. You have to be 35 to qualify. So, but he did clearly leave the door open for the future. I don't think there's any question that he had a bright political career ahead of him. But to say that he's a political figure, I think would be stretching it a bit. I would think you'd have to have participated in elective office before you could be classified as a political figure. But clearly he had strong feelings, and these people really get under my skin. They call him fascist, sexist, misogynist, a Nazi. And I'm like, well, tell me what of his talk would ring like a Nazi? Patriotism, belief in God, family, doing the right thing. I mean, those I would hope would be ideals that we could all agree on. I don't know why that would result in name calling, other than they just didn't like his conservative views. Does it bother you, Emerald, like it bothers me that these people are going around saying that Charlie Kirk was a Nazi when what he talked about was not hate like they allege, but instead he talked about patriotism, respecting our flag, believing in God, believing in the sanctity of life. Are those Nazi from Nazi dogma? I mean, what's to hate there?
We're not dealing with honest actors. This is communist, leftist talking points, right? And their propaganda has particularly been used on, let's say, the Charlie's demographic when he would go and have these talks. Higher education in the universities and those institutions. They're not calling him that in good faith. It's their projection. They don't believe in civil discourse. They do not believe in debate. John, the only thing they understand is violence. And we saw that come to a head with Charlie. And look, like you said, Charlie was as far from a Nazi as you can get. He engaged with them in good faith. In fact, I say he's the nice one, right? Because he believed you could still have good, honest debate, or he thought if he just showed you that you could, right? And if he proved to you that you were wrong on the merits and on the arguments, that he could sway you to the right side or to at least thinking rationally. But that's not what they want. They're closed off to it. They don't want that. And so I fear we will see more of this unless there's some real accountability, which I don't think we're seeing yet if we're not having an honest investigation. Now, you heard President Trump talk about labeling these as terrorist groups. It is a larger operation than people understand, right? We have been infiltrated by communist Marxists. They are influencing the youth. And we have to counter that. We haven't done an effective job of it yet. And we probably won't be able to do it by debate.
So let's get back to the theater. Do you think Tyler Robinson acted alone?
No. I don't think he was even the assassin. I think he might think he is. And how often have we seen this? Leah Harvey Oswald said he wasn't. I don't believe in the confession even. How many times, even studies show that often people falsely confess. This kid, I think we'll learn he's probably got some special needs. He was talking to people on Discord. FBI Director Kash Patel said today in his testimony on the Hill that they're looking into some 20 people on Discord. Oh, and another thing that makes it theater for me is the Forrest Gump of terrorist events was there. One named George Zinn. Somehow he was at 9/11 and he's, archived footage of him in interviews saying he knew it was Al-Qaeda has surfaced. He called in a bomb threat or whatever to the Salt Lake City Marathon. And he gets up and says, shoot me, shoot me, shoot me. He was an obvious decoy. This is an operation, if you look at it. And as fast as they're trying to shut it down and as fast as they're trying to tell you it's this kid and erase the crime scene, they cleaned the crime scene. John, we are just a few days removed from the assassination. You would never do that. They pack up the tent, the gear, they're doing construction. The FBI immediately cleaned the crime scene before it was even really forensically analyzed. That's an obvious clue to us, John, if we just pay attention that the FBI was cleaning up the operation just as they did in Butler, Pennsylvania. I'm sure you said you've reported on this extensively, so your audience knows the kind of action they took under the guise of investigating it.
So what do you think's behind it? Who do you think is behind it? Or do you have any insight or even supposition?
I can only say that there could be multiple possibilities. Charlie was a threat to several entities, I believe. He is a threat to the leftist Marxist ideology, right? That is so pervasive on college campuses. That's absolutely true. Now, do I think this kid acted alone? No. I think there's a larger movement that, let's say it's the leftist tranny terrorist group. I think there's a larger operation behind this kid. And I still don't think he was the assassin based on whatever I've seen. If they present me with evidence that is more conclusive, then okay. But I don't believe it. And I talked to a lot of people at the angle of the shot and this kid, it just doesn't make sense. Could there be the leftist Antifa or trans terrorism behind him? Yeah. And that is a more organized group than people understand. There's getting to be more some reporting on it. Could it be a bad nation state actor using this tranny terrorist? Sure. Which one? I know you're not, that's question, right? Is he even a threat to the deep state and our own intel? Sure. Because Charlie talked about the deep state a lot. I hadn't watched him much over the years, but now that, since the assassination, I went back and watched a lot of what he had to say, and he'd really started to ask some questions that put you on a list, that put you under surveillance, that make you a target. And had he been questioning Israel? He had. I didn't know to the extent, but what's interesting, and I haven't shared this, I don't think on air anywhere. But I have told many people this behind the scenes because I had joked about it. I had gotten calls from, like those APAC types, because they call everybody. They don't just call members of Congress. They court journalists too. And in recent months, especially since Signalgate, John, I've been getting a weekly call. I've been getting almost a weekly call since President Trump won the election. And it was just friendly. Oh, I think you're so great. You're so inspirational. How can I help you? I just want to help you. Okay. And then I got more frequent calls after Signalgate. Remember about the release of messages or the leaking of messages that involved Pete Hegseth, JD Vance,
yes,
former national security advisor. Why is his name leaving me at the moment? Waltz. There was concern, and they would ask me, why is Pete Hegseth not with us anymore? And I said, I think he is. I don't know what you're seeing, but all indications to me is that he is. And then with Charlie, they were asking me about Charlie too. And I blew it off. I said, look, I don't know. They would say, why isn't he with us? Why is he turning on Israel? I'd be like, I don't know. I don't talk to Charlie. I don't even watch Charlie. From what I understand, he's with you too. And when I found out he had been shot, I couldn't help but think about that. So I don't know. But I'm not buying the official narrative that there's this, lone shooter kid. Okay. I think there's more to it. And I don't know for sure who's behind it, but there's a lot of tough questions that need to be asked because this is a pivotal moment in our society, in our country.
All right. So what does it say about Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, who we're told are the most truthful people on earth? And if they say it, it must be true.
We're all of a sudden trusting the same FBI that is still holding the Seth Rich laptop hostage, although a judge has ordered it to be released. We still don't know what happened to Seth Rich. And they could technically release that laptop to his attorney, Ty Clevenger, who's been fighting it in court. But even under this current FBI, they're not handing that over. A lot of the things they've said over the last few months just hasn't sat well with anyone. It sounds like, based on today, right before you and I jumped on, Dan Bongino isn't long for the FBI anyway. They already brought in the co-FBI director. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows that doesn't happen. Andrew Bailey of Missouri. So that was indications that he's out. And I think Dan and Kash Patel both look scared to death. I don't know what's happened to them since they went to Washington, D.C., but they look scared to death. And I'll tell you, I have a colleague who lives in Dan's building, and they say he about jumps out of his skin at any sound. Like you'll pass him. You definitely don't talk to him. They made the mistake of saying, "Hey, Dan," and he chewed their head off. He's like, "You can't just talk to me," and like all paranoid and scared like. So
that's weird. He doesn't seem that type. But I did read not too long ago that they recruited 50 people to protect Dan Bongino at his desk in the FBI, and that they had to go outside of the bureau to find people that were actually would be loyal to him. Now, that's got to tell you something. 50 people to protect him while he's at his desk? What's that about?
I don't think Dan will be with the agency or the bureau very long. I don't know if they've been intimidated or if they're scared or if they're relying on the career people who still surround them, because look, there hasn't been that much turnover. And especially if you look at the Washington field office, right? It's still swampy. Everything's still swampy. And so sometimes these people get in there and they think they meet these people that they thought they were going to get rid of. And then they're very good at smoozing them, pretending, look, I just did what I had to do. I was just doing my job. But man, am I so glad you're here. I'm with you. And they talk their way into staying in position. And then in the meantime, they're misdirecting the principles that were put in place by the administration. They're making sure that certain intelligence doesn't reach them, or they're giving them bad intel. That's not just happening at the FBI. That's also happening in the intelligence community at large still, because I can tell you that specifically in my dealings with the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. Tulsi Gabbard has had to fight real hard, like very hard, to get the real intelligence on, obviously my focus is election fraud. And now that's led me to Venezuela. And there have been many blockers in the intelligence community trying to make sure she can't get the intelligence product. Remember, she said publicly she found burn bags of evidence of 2020 election fraud. And then when she went to give the president a report on election fraud and our election security, they talked her into leaving out 2020. And so President Trump got that, and it was an executive summary. We thought he'd gotten the full report. Turns out he didn't, because they didn't let Tulsi do it.
Well, you may remember that I've worked very hard for 2.5 years on the Georgia election, 2020 election. I've seen the evidence. I've spoken to the witnesses. I've played devil's advocate with the forensic accountants. There is zero doubt in my mind that Georgia wasn't stolen in 2020, not by a few votes. 40,000 in Fulton County alone and 400,000 in the state, according to Joe Rossi and David Cross, who are both numbers guys who have devoted an inordinate amount of their lives to peeling back the layers to look. Just today, the Georgia Supreme Court fortunately upheld the Court of Appeals and ruled that Fani Willis could not serve as a prosecutor in her persecution of the Trump 19. So they're now talking about finding a new prosecutor to carry on the case. I'm disappointed that they didn't go further and recommend that the Georgia bar remove her for her inappropriate and unethical conduct. Nevertheless, 2020 was real, but I can tell you that, I ran for Attorney General of Georgia with President Trump's endorsement because I was frustrated that no one would give us justice. You couldn't get it in the courts. The constitutional officers failed us. The media flagrantly lied. And I had many, 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 many conversations with members of the media. And when I would start to give them the facts, their eyes would just gloss over. So one of my disappointments is that after the election was over, the Trump world has not embraced me any longer. And I've noticed a pattern that people that were involved in 2020 election stuff are not really invited into the tent any longer.
You're right. And I'll tell you 2 nuggets. And one relates to Charlie Kirk. I learned on Friday, as I was sitting in a briefing with a source working in the government on this issue, that when they were just outside investigators, they took this to Charlie Kirk. Some of the information that I've been releasing in my very long thread on X on the 2020 election that leads into 2024. I'm almost 200 tweets in now, I think, in the thread. It's pinned to the top of my X account at Emerald Robinson. If your audience isn't familiar with what I'm talking about and they want to go check it out, I've tried to make an archive, an extensive history of what happened between 2020 and now. So in getting some intelligence briefing on Friday, I was told, because, it was the day after his death and the person felt that they could reveal this now. They were very saddened. They said, look, we took this to Charlie. He was one of the first people we took it to give this information to the public. And he turned us down, saying, I've been warned not to touch this, and I'm not going to touch it. And if Charlie Kirk had touched it, a lot more people would have been talking about it. And he seemed like he had a little bit of immunity right to backlash on something like that. But he had been told not to touch it, and he wouldn't touch it. Okay.
I'm processing. I'm trying to sort through that. But I'm telling you, I think there are people that are high up in the administration that don't want President Trump to look at 2020. I think they want to close the book on it and move on. And, a lot of my friends say, oh, well, that's old news. Let's move on.
It's
well,
not.
I'll buy that. Okay, let's move on. But let's don't let it happen again. And if we cover up the truth and don't expose it for what it is, what guarantee do we have of a republic that we can have any faith in our franchise actually meaning something? That's my paradigm. And it seems to be commonsensical to me that we should uncover the truth of 2020 and that we reform our elections in the United States. I think Trump is actually working around these people and
he is
espousing things like paper ballots and shorter voting and no absentee voting except when necessary.
And wanting to have an investigation into it. And I'll tell you, you are absolutely right when you say that there are people around President Trump that don't want actively turn away people who talk about 2020 and want to even keep still the president from getting to the bottom of it. And I can tell you how as well. Why I know that. Because with that intelligence report that I told you about Tulsi Gabbard, okay, when she was, they were compiling the report and they were setting the circumstances and the time to give it to President Trump. Not only did she get pushed back from the now ousted director, Defense Intelligence Agency director, Jeff Cruz. He just got let go a couple weeks ago.
Yes.
He was a major blocker, but someone in Susie Wild's office called her and told her, I think this is why she didn't include it in the executive summary, and Trump was not happy about it. They told her, do not include the 2020 election. We don't need him to get distracted by that. We got to focus on 2026. And so then when she presented the executive summary to President Trump, he was very upset that it wasn't all encompassing. He said, what is this? With some expletives that you can imagine. And he's like, why isn't this in there? And who's the conspiracy? Who's behind it? Like, is it Venezuela? Because that's what you kind of been telling me. And, we're doing all this. So there are people high up in the White House who are making sure that anyone who talks about 2020 isn't in his orbit, and that the intelligence on 2020 still isn't making its way to him. Like, they're the ones who decide.
So is it possible that they are being politically astute, that talking about 2020 is not a popular conversation and that people do want to move on, and so that it's better just to maybe take the lumps and plan for the future and leave 2020 alone? Personally, I think it traces directly back to the deep state. I mean, we now know that Bill Barr was in Fani Willis's ear, coaching her and mentoring her on how to conduct this indictment, this fake, phony, absurd indictment in a RICO charge. I mean, this just reeks of deep state to me. And maybe that is why maybe it's healthy distancing from it. I don't know.
No, it's not healthy. It's not. And especially if the president of the United States, the commander in chief, believes that there has been a nefarious operation conducted by a foreign nation state against our country, specifically our elections, which he has seen evidence of, and he asks you for that report, you give it to him, right? So it's not even about the public dialogue or discourse. This is about our national security, and he is the commander in chief, and he's in charge of ensuring our national security. Because yes, it can still happen again. 2024, we were given a lifeline, okay? And that was with a little help. But that won't happen again, I've been assured. I believe, so here is what I have been, some of the evidence I've seen and what has been shared with me by multiple sources that are working with Tulsi, with people at the DOJ. A lot of this does go back directly to our agency. Yes, is China involved? Is Serbia involved? Yes. Is Venezuela involved? Yes. Cuba too. I know it sounds crazy, right? Because we think of them as like failed third world countries. They are very influential, especially Venezuela, and they've got, it's a $4 trillion cartel industry. It's got major infrastructure, and they're tied to China, they're tied to Iran, they're tied to Serbia. But there are Americans who have helped them, and they're not just Democrats. And these are names that a lot of people in that influential political world know quite well and have worked together with in some capacity, or at least, kind of hobnobbed with along the way. And when they found out some of these people were involved, some of these people who were on trial, they were shocked. And it's a little bit scary, so I think we have a crisis in courage, and we still have a CIA that is very involved in keeping this under wraps, because at the end of the day, they're involved as well. In fact, Patrick Byrne dropped on my show a nugget that allegedly John Brennan, and it sounds unbelievable, but I talked to a couple other people who confirmed this was true. They said it was true. I'm saying this is allegedly. John Brennan is business partners with the oligarch in Serbia that runs the Belgrade Dominion office that holds the data on Chinese Huawei servers.
I've been saying for a long time that I feel this federal government is rotten to its core. And you take somebody like John Brennan, who had perhaps the top of the pinnacle in terms of career bureaucrat wielding immense power. And they're willing to do things that you and I would never contemplate, i.e. kill people. They literally kill people.
Yeah.
And I watched a former CIA agent. I don't know. Do you ever watch Julian Dory?
No,
It's a
I
podcast.
haven't.
He's in New Jersey. He's a young guy. He is brilliant. He has some great guests on. But he's been on a tear about JFK and about the CIA. And he's got a CIA agent who John Brennan caused to be incarcerated for 2 years. They bankrupted him. And so now he's just angry and willing to tell it all. And he said John Brennan had weekly Tuesday meetings where they would talk about who was going to be eliminated.
Wow.
And that they almost seemed, these are my words interpreting what he said, but they almost seemed gleeful over the things that they were doing. And I presume that these were foreign actors and foreign countries that they labeled as a threat to the United States. But these people clearly operate outside the bounds of the law, out of the margins, and have unlimited sources of money and access to money, our taxpayer money, and
USAID.
No oversight, zero.
No
and I think
oversight.
the people that are in charge of the oversight have either been to Epstein Island or they're on the take. I don't know. That's supposition, but I cannot come up with another plausible explanation for why this stuff continues to go on.
Well, Congressman Tim Burchett, he always corrects me, of Tennessee has explicitly said publicly many times how the blackmail operation in Congress works. Ted Cruz has alluded to the idea that the FBI runs Congress. There have been multiple members of Congress who've been courageous enough to admit that Congress has a blackmail problem, and that is our intelligence community that is blackmailing them. And talking about John Brennan, I don't think he sees them as enemies to the United States. I think he considers himself an enemy to the American ideas. I think he's definitely overcome with communist ideology, and that's what he subscribes to. I'll tell you something else about his CIA. During his tenure as the director of the Central Intelligence Agency, there was intelligence product coming in from across the world from station chiefs about the flipping of elections in other countries and how it worked. And from what I understand from a very prolific former agent and a station chief, is that this product, it still exists. Tulsi has it, okay? Director Gabbard has it. But it's been there the whole time. And it wouldn't have been that just Brennan saw it, because we understand that Brennan's bent. What's sort of hard to fathom is that actually these products probably went to about 300 people, had their eyes on it. Okay. And they knew that these elections could be rigged and have been rigged in other countries, and nobody did anything about it. This wasn't some secret for Brennan's eyes only. They were all well aware that these elections have been rigged in other countries and could probably be rigged here. Obviously, Brennan was probably conducting a lot of this. So we still here. I asked somebody the other day, how much of a hold does Brennan still have on our intelligence community? And they said, you have to understand, probably about 70% of the members of the intelligence community owe their allegiance to Brennan, that they were put in place there. He pushed out anyone who wasn't loyal to him or to his ideology and replaced them. They explained, and this was a former station chief, you would have to do a massive wipeout of the higher ups, particularly, to try to even start to fix the problem. And they likened it to a few years ago when Iran found out that we had infiltrated their military and that we had many assets, like, several dozen assets, but they didn't know which ones. They knew that we had recruited several dozen and placed them in the military. They didn't know. So what they did is they wiped out 10,000 to get rid of the several dozen that were disloyal to them and working with the U.S. And, a few of the former Intel members that I've talked to that got pushed out said that's basically what you'd have to do. You'd have to do a wipeout. And they were like, honestly, we probably operate better because look at how subversive they're being. You won't notice a difference in national security, they said, as far as it being worse. It might actually be better.
Do you think Tulsi Gabbard has the intestinal fortitude to continue to dog this? I was hopeful that Russia would be chapter 1. I was optimistically hoping that 2020 would be chapter 2, and that chapter 3 would be the goods on Butler and a true accounting of what happened there. And that therefore the American people would be so outraged that there was nothing that could stop the reform of the intelligence community. Now I'm starting to wonder. I just don't know. It seems like things have slowed down a bit. I don't know.
Yeah.
Certainly the tragedy of, with Charlie Kirk has derailed whatever momentum may have been there.
It was already slowing down before that.
It felt that way to me.
Yeah, it had started slowing down. There's blockers within the intelligence community, blockers within the administration. There's not many people at the DOJ that want to do anything about any of these issues you mentioned. Tulsi Gabbard herself wants to. I think that she might not have the institutional knowledge of how to exactly go about that, and that has crippled her a little bit. But as far as the intestinal fortitude, she has it, as long as she can keep Trump on her side, right, and keep backing her, because it's been a slower going process. So I think that's where that stands. I will say, though, there is some good work going on, but I don't think it's enough and fast enough. We shall see. There's one shoot a drop that I'm waiting on this week, and I don't know if the assassination of Charlie Kirk possibly derailed that at all, and I probably won't know that till the end of the week.
Well, we will continue to follow you on
Thank you.
Lindell Television, and also on your Substack. You can find Emerald Robinson there, and I am a frequent reader of your material, and I'm always captivated by it, and you stimulate the neurons in my brain and curiosity. I really appreciate what you do, Emerald, and we appreciate your coming on the show, and I'm fortunate to be able to call you a friend. Thank you very much.
Likewise. And I just want to say, John, that it probably doesn't feel good, but it speaks well of you if you're being shunned, because that means you really are telling the truth if you're not invited to as many events. And I too have found out that the hard way. I will let people know that they can read my latest on the Charlie Kirk assassination, Who Killed Charlie Kirk, at emerald.tv. That's my Substack.
Very good. Well, thank you, Emerald, and
thanks, John.
Have a good rest of your week. And again, thanks for your generosity of time.
You too. Thanks, John.